Welcome to We Built It Because We Had to. Conversations with early stage tech founders about the spark, the struggle, and the story behind building something that had to exist. I'm Jonathan Buckley of the Artesian Network, where we have helped tech founders scale companies and have seen more than half our clients ultimately reach an IPO or acquisition. Today, I'm joined by Callen Sapien from Synthreo. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Synthreo.
Synthro?
It's a fun
Synthrio.
one. Synthreo.
Got it. Got it. Error on the host part here. Let us get into the story behind what they built and why they had to build it. Callen, great to have you here. To kick us off, for anyone hearing you or about your company for the first time, can you give us a quick version of what you do and the problem you solve?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy these types of conversations, and hopefully they talk about entrepreneurship as one of the loneliest journeys. So it's always good to be able to get out and show others that they're not alone, and everybody is going, not everybody, but many people are going through these things.
Right.
From a Synthreo perspective, I would say the genesis of us started a long time ago. I've spent a lot of my career helping others achieve their own vision. I've worked with a lot of founders. I had several exits for other founders and helped them. And a friend of mine, one of my closest friends, Vince Kent, had sold his service provider business, his managed service provider. Our timing aligned with when AI started to become ubiquitous, right? Available to all people, whether you're a consumer or a business.
Hmm.
And both of us leaned in heavy. We realized, though, that SMBs had an opportunity, and small enterprise, even to an extent, had an opportunity to level the playing field for probably the greatest time in the history, because every other advancement had been relegated to those with the money, with those that are able to invest. And and the SMBs had partners in the managed service providers. So they had a technical guide, a Sherpa that could take them through. But both were ignored, ill-equipped, and didn't
Hmm.
have the experience or the resources to actually master it. And so we, looking at that problem, realized that if we didn't help them, then there wasn't really going to be anyone that had. And
Hmm.
so we ended up meeting our other co-founder, Ivan Savak, who is a brilliant machine learning and neuroscience, artificial intelligent master. And
Right.
we developed the product in a way that it could be consumed multi-tenant, agnostic, as a governance layer for those SMBs and the MSPs that serve them. And it provides an agnostic capability around the consumption of a chat workspace. So if you want to use Gemini and Claude and all the other models that exist out there, you can do that in one place without having data retained. If you wanted to build like N8N or the Roosts of the world or the make.coms, and you needed to improve agentic wise, you can do that on the platform, and then have a governance that starts to solve for sycophancy and starts to solve for AI behavioral drift, all in
Right.
one place, right? And that's what
Right.
we designed it for.
Right. Excellent. Excellent. Well, as we talked in the pre-interview here, uh, I've been part of launching and growing companies inside an MSP model. It is not easy. It is not easy. So, in a couple of minutes, I'd like you to turn around and tell us, the ins and outs of making that a strategic decision to go through the MSPs, how you did it. In my case, it was a company called Axient back in 2009, 10, and 11. Maybe it was 8, 9. Anyway, it was Dave Garnett and his father founded the company, and Justin Moore came in as an investor and took the CEO spot, and it was a fun ride. Uh, One of the things that interested me about your background, before we get back to the business, is you didn't have formal education from about age 10 to 25, And I love this because there are so many giant success stories about people that didn't go through a formal education process and yet became captains of industry. So and then you got a 4.0 in your bachelor's at about 25 or mid 20s. Tell us about that. Like, that's an interesting background. How did you navigate the waters, without a formalized education?
I was fortunate in many ways,
Hmm.
I would say, because I did, like you said, I had 1st grade, 2nd grade, I skipped to 6th grade, and it was a Montessori type learning that I was
Oh,
in,
me too.
and that it's incredible when it's operated true to its spiritual kind of driver
Yeah. Yeah.
or its guidance. It was,
Right.
on a farm, right? So we got to go work out on the farm some days, do woodworking. I was actually obsessed with woodworking. But I went through and was very fortunate to have a inquisitive nature, and it was driven by this company. The school is called Upland Hills, part of
Okay.
Upland Hills Farm, in Michigan, and it's just tremendous. The impact it had on my life was incredible. My parents, for the best reasons, I'm the oldest of 5,
Hmm.
took me out and them out thinking that they could kind of unschool us and put us in that position to where we could have an advantage because we were all reasonably intelligent, highly inquisitive people. But, like the best laid plans of mice and men, we were, incredibly impoverished, right? Jumping from house to house, homelessness, all that fun stuff.
Oh,
That's a
okay.
hard place to learn. And so I ended up going to work very early at 14. I actually got into a weird role in mattresses at 16. I ran a mattress store from the age of
Huh.
basically 16 until I was in my early 20s. But during that, there were times where I was working 116, 120 hours a week, right?
Oh my God.
All
Yeah.
in Yeah, it was not much time, right?
Right.
Survival.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
and but I ended up falling into sales, because sales, it was where somewhere that if you were personable,
Hmm.
well-spoken, if you cared about others, though you could do pretty well in sales if you don't care about others, but if you cared about others, you could do well. And I ended up, doing okay, uh, but then the global financial meltdown happened, and I
Mm.
lost 3 jobs in 6 months, had offers to start new jobs that would be rescinded, and, my wife at the time pushed me. She said, "You're too smart for this.
Hmm.
You just take a couple classes." I actually had a motorcycle accident. I got hit, and it was a windfall, right? Because you won the lawsuit, and I used that to be able to focus on studies. I still worked a little bit, but what was interesting for me was I made the decision to go to a community college locally. And
Hmm.
that was the best decision I had made in my life to that date because the small, intimate learning
Hmm.
gave me direct access to my teachers and my professors,
Oh,
and
so
I had to use
important.
them. Oh my gosh, it made
Yeah.
the world of difference because I actually transferred to our university locally and transferred back because I didn't like sitting in this lecture hall with, 300 other students. I love
Right.
pushing, I loved achieving. But one of the toughest things, and I think the thing that actually ended up setting the stage to where I was able to get through differential equations and static vibrations and, all the way to through the highest levels of calculus, was the fact that I took 6th grade math in my 1st semester. I
Mm.
I didn't know. And it was a humiliating moment for me, right? I'm an intelligent person. It was challenging for me to say, "I'm gonna pay for something that doesn't count." But doing that hard thing and taking that humility is what drove me through, and I think most of the other success was built on.
Wow. Wow. That's an inspiration. Um, well, clearly at 16, if you're managing a store already at 16, you were born with talents, You're certainly
Appreciate it.
affable, but very smart. And so anyway, just an inspiration to some of you out there listening that may not have that formal education background. That does not prevent you from eventually getting it and or becoming an entrepreneur yourself. So, well,
Absolutely.
back to Synthrio. So as I mentioned before, you're specifically built around the MSP channel and the SMB market, not enterprise accounts. Most AI companies chase these enterprise accounts first. When when did you see uh, at first that gap clearly enough to think someone actually had to go build for it? Because that's a risky call. Um, it's clearly gets done successfully in case studies. What was your case?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It was an interesting moment for us, right? Vince had grown a managed service provider into the teens and had a great exit. I had grown software companies largely focused on the MSP channel, but we had success with the American Airlines of the world, the DoD and Accenture, PwC. I knew those three-letter consultancies and agencies, and so, but what we saw was just a blatant eschewing. You said it. They focused on the enterprise, and there's this 48% of the world's economy are dreamers.
Right, right,
They're
right.
entrepreneurs. They're small and medium business owners. I had spent the last 17 years getting to know them and their customers. MSPs are largely small to medium businesses, and I fell in love with the communities. And I am honestly greatly concerned and gravely concerned that AI is an asteroid that's smashing into the side of the planet and giving an opportunity for mammals to rise. And as we were seeing this, we actually had debated building an AI native MSP that focused on mid-market and
Mhm.
enterprise. But both my co-founders and I are subscribers to Bob Burg's Go Giver mentality. I'm not sure if you're
I'm
familiar.
not familiar. No.
So the idea is that if you build something that provides an immense amount of value, the rewards come, right? And you don't do it for selfish reasons. And we had all achieved enough, some varying degrees of success for all of us,
Mhm.
that it felt imperative to ensure the health and success of this industry and these industries and the dreamers. And we feel incredibly motivated by it. I'm not a very religious person. I definitely believe that I'm more in that agnostic. Like I'm
Mhm.
not, don't have enough hubris to say one thing or another. But
Mhm.
lately, I've been using a metaphor for what I think of AI as for the small and medium business owners, and it does have a little bit of a religious connotation, which it's a slingshot, right? It's the first opportunity that I believe that technology is able to be employed by the small guy to actually level the playing field. And I feel like it's our job. I feel like our push, the reason we do this is and the reason we must is because they need the slingshot. They need it and they deserve it. And we can level the playing field. That's why we did it.
That's amazing. So there's like a philosophical bend to this, really, that gave you the inspiration. That's interesting. So, well, a follow-on question: where are you in your funding process? In my experience, a broad set of VCs kind of shy away from MSP dependent businesses. There are ones that fund them, um, but you have to go dig for them. Where are you in your funding process, and how have you now navigated that?
Yeah, we've spent the last year and a half bootstrapped,
Okay.
largely. Well, bootstrapped is the wrong word. Vince was our primary investor. We
Okay.
did do it in the right way, safe round, all that piece. We were fortunate enough to do that, so we were able to have some of the right talent. That isn't the journey that everybody gets. I absolutely recognize that we had that gift to be able to focus in this area. I do think that goes back to the philosophical side. That doesn't mean it's not completely selfless. We do hope to have amazing growth, and in that vein, we are starting to have some pretty significant trajectory successes by our end customers because our focus is actually sell through. Right? There's a lot of companies in AI that are focused on selling to the business directly, almost SaaSifying AI to deliver a singular benefit. I always like to say that because we're a general purpose AI tool, I always like to say I can do anything is the worst. I don't know the the allowance of swearing on here, but I'll say it's the worst effing value prop that exists, right?
Okay. Yeah.
But that's our value prop. We could build or do anything, and that is
Hmm.
a service one, which is the risk that VCs typically see. However, we've been able to hone that in through showing success and traction, measuring ROI and different things that others have had challenges with. And so we are actually in our first seed round that we're going through right
Okay.
now. We found a few strategic partners. We've partnered with some MSPs because we don't want to sacrifice the mission. For me, one of the biggest failures I've had is choosing the wrong financial partner. You sometimes feel so desperate to achieve your vision that you
Hmm.
end up sacrificing the mission to have a glimpse at it. And so we've been very careful about who we take money from, when, and why.
Right. Right. Interesting. Okay. Great. Well, of course, if you demonstrate traction, you're de-risking the business. So that opens up the world of venture money for you, investor money. So good on you. How do you avoid the trap of being all things to all people within the MSP?
That's
Where because that's a tough marketing problem. Because marketers like me come after you to focus, focus, focus. Right, narrow it down and mind the vein. How do you do it? You know?
so we were overly, I would say, restrictive and
Okay.
probably too militant in our focus for the first 9 months. We were very disciplined in that I mentioned there are a lot of companies working on automating help desk, internal operations, all these things for MSPs, including the big ones that already exist.
Hmm.
And we actually shied away from that, even though we had the capability, without realizing that the MSPs needed to learn how to protect their own house, work with AI themselves, eat their own cooking before they went out to their partners. And so we actually almost failed because we wouldn't help them the same way we would
Oh,
other SMBs. And
okay.
so what we've done now is we've said, here are the things in the business that are repeatable in every business, right? Projects, RFPs, uh, research on sales, client retention, things that everybody needs. And what we've done is we've built agents, skills, GPTs, whatever you want to call them, in
Hmm.
order to show the traction early on and prove the value.
Hmm.
And when people can consume those, they're typically within that ICP for us, that ideal customer profile. And then we'll expand out into other services. So we really try and make sure that someone is getting real value first within the wheel set of the things that we are highly competent in delivering. And
Hmm.
then we will go a little bit more broad.
Okay. Okay. That's great. So now onto a question about building trust behind your company. In my experience, having launched a few companies that sell into the MSP market, MSPs live and die on trust, with
My,
their
yes.
clients, and they're historically cautious about new vendor relationships. I've found. Was there a specific moment, a conversation or a deal you watched fall apart, where you thought the tooling that existed just was not built for how these businesses actually work?
Yes, they're early on, we actually felt that our product, our secure chat side of things, the secure workspace, was ready. And so we had this piece where we were giving everybody an NFR for free. I've been in the industry for 17 years. I'm highly visible. People did trust me, and they trusted the team we had in place at the time. And we gave it to them, and it wasn't. And instead of owning some of that in the training and the teaching, the the leadership that I had at the time didn't actually, I would say, meet up their end of the bargain, right?
Mhm,
And so uh, we lost some trust with those early adopters, and we actually saw them go to a competitive solution, right? And to be fair, my way of retaining and maintaining trust was by letting them, right? Everybody had annual contracts, they had these things, but honestly, I wanna win together, I wanna
Mhm.
partner, and I
Mhm.
and I wanna be a partner, and being a partner means that both sides benefit. And so, I was able to maintain good relationships through those things. They avoided the client disasters that would have been harmful for themselves. And in the end, most of those people have actually circled back with us and they are now thriving partners. And
Well,
so it's
good,
a
good.
really cool thing to see because if you recognize that failure and that trust and the importance and don't give it lip service, but actually operate as a partner, you can maintain that usually. Not every time, but
Right,
usually.
right, right, right. So I have a question related to a previous one. I get the philosophy that you're after with approaching SMB through MSPs, right? The small to mid-size businesses. That it's a noble, actually. It sounds like a noble cause in the way you put it. A lot of investors and other operators would have said, go up market, chase bigger logos, prove it there first. By the way, I don't subscribe to that. I think you need to earn your chops into the enterprise. You come up through the mid market. It's a more reliable path, right? There's a
I
lot of
agree.
companies burn out of cash trying to satisfy the enterprise. And what's missing is trust. Trust can't be short circuited with $1 billion funding. It's earned over as a function of time. Anyway, enough from me. What did you believe about the MSP market that most people were getting wrong? And I mean financially here. I get your approach being different.
My belief that is fundamentally different than a lot of the other vendors out there came from where I grew up in early days of ConnectWise, seeing the opportunity and the value that they drive within a business when they service there's no word for it, so I'm gonna make one up, but when they, like, servicize their offering and not productize, but when they servicize their offering, the opposite of productization.
Hmm.
The willingness to be flexible, the willingness to push the ICP to a little bit and to do a little bit more. The trust to your point on the earlier one, but also the value that they give is incredibly valuable
Hmm.
from a monetary perspective. And in the last 7 years, what I've seen, and my other vendors may not do integrations with me after I say this, but I I've seen an erosion of pushing MSPs to be service providers. They're trying to remove
Mm,
the S from the MSP and replace it with or they're trying to change it into SaaS, right?
I see. Yeah.
And they're saying, "Here's the margin that I will give you. This
Hmm.
is what you should earn. This is what your value is." And I think it's ridiculous that this industry has shifted to allow the vendors to dictate the value of the person actually delivering the service. And so what we've built is a philosophy that at minimum, an MSP that's working with me should be making 50% margin. And they should be targeting closer to 200% margin because that's the value that they bring. That was the way we used to do things, and the industry was thriving. And now we're in a position where people are fighting over 2 points, 1.8,
Mm,
and it to me, that's just if everybody's healthy, everybody wins. And I don't wanna sound like you said noble and this, I don't wanna sound like I'm not also a capitalist. I'm a little
right, right. Sure,
capitalist.
sure.
But
Of
at the end of
course.
the day, we can win together, and that's what everybody loses sight of. Microsoft was only successful with 365 because of the MSP industry.
Mm,
It it
yeah.
it it wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the MSP industry, and what MSPs got out of that, and I'm probably gonna tick somebody at Microsoft off, but I don't really care, is 10 to 18%. A $1 trillion industry was created, and now you get 10 to 18%. That's BS. And so my belief is I can unlock and we can unlock again the value that they provide through AI as a service.
Yeah. Mm, that's some stuff to think about. Now, so Callen, can you think back to your very first MSP that said yes?
Yeah.
That gave you the steam that maybe this is going somewhere?
Yes, and what's funny is it wasn't someone that I would expect. We had, I've got some of my closest friends are MSPs. A lot of them
Okay.
have not said yes yet. They're not ready, and I'm not gonna push them until they're ready. But we had a gentleman out of Ohio that was one of our first yeses. Not the biggest MSP, not the smallest MSP, just kinda provides value and goes through. And the validation that we had that someone that we didn't know, someone that we didn't have a relationship, we hadn't sat in Evolve with, we hadn't sat at PAX 8 with, we hadn't sat anywhere with, just happened to pick up a phone when we called and we closed the deal was just ridiculously gratifying. And it makes me want to do anything to drive their success. I'll cheat and say there's a second one that just has sustained me as a founder because they
Mhm.
so closely understand the vision and the execution against that vision. And they had been enriching other MSPs because they had no one to do the AI work for them internally. And then they made the leap, they came on board, and they've been able to drive an immense amount of value in their base. And it's just so like when they win, I'm charged up. Like because that's the end goal because I know that that's going to make my business ultimately sticky. I'm gonna get closer to completing my mission and vision, and it's just the let's go moment.
Right. Right. Interesting. So, I could go on for days. You're a wealth of knowledge here and great background experience, but, let me ask you a few more questions. So on to, before you had a repeatable motion, it sounds like you have a repeatable, predictable revenue motion. Would you say that, or am I getting ahead of myself?
No, we do now.
You do. Okay.
And what's really important is it's not our repeatable revenue motion. We're proving that MSPs can have the repeatable revenue motion. I think that's the other piece. You asked the question a minute ago about what does someone have wrong? MSPs can sell. And we're proving that with our revenue motion. Now we're doing a lot of the lifting with our partners because this is a new area. But that motion is getting smoother and
Mhm.
smoother, and the flywheel is moving, and it's building on itself, and we're not at the hockey stick yet,
Okay.
but we're starting to feel that curvature as you start to do that. So the repeatable motion is incredible, and what I like even more about that is there's a VC out of Houston. I love these guys. It's Mercury Fund. I don't know if you've ever engaged with them,
No.
but Aziz, one of the partners there, managing partner, gave me advice a long time ago, gave me 2 pieces of advice that are really important, which was you have to go slow to go fast, which is incredibly hard when you're burning because you feel this pressure. But the other piece of advice that he gave me around that flywheel was somebody that's not the CEO has to sell.
Yes.
We've had multiple others in the organization close deals, onboard partners, and achieve success with our end customers selling through. And that to me is
Mm.
the actual repeatable process.
That I've written about this, and I actually have a tutorial video about making the leap from founder-led sales and that demarcation where you can bring in a new person to your organization and have them productive in X number of days or weeks because you actually have a more formalized, repeatable motion. So, did you make that leap from founder-led sales dependency, relatively early, or is it still in process?
We did make it fairly early. I was involved in most of the early deals though, right? People are buying your vision, they're buying you. And that's that shift when they go from buying you to buying the product or the service. And we brought in an individual that was more knowledgeable in selling to the end customer than he was selling to an MSP or
Mhm.
selling AI. That
I
was
see.
incredibly important because again, go back to we need to make them successful. We did that early from an enablement perspective,
That's
and
right.
now it's really starting to pay off.
Great, great. Yeah, so your sales motion actually is bifurcated. That's what we did at Axion. So it's enablement of the MSPs you have so that they're able to sell on a repeatable basis, but then also the attraction and signing of new MSPs to grow your reach. So it's if people listening haven't worked in this MSP selling tech through MSP model, that's the complexity. You have
Yes.
enablement, and you have which grows your sales, and then you have growing your available market by adding MSPs. So
And
yeah,
it's rare to be able to find someone that can do both that's not a founder.
yeah, yeah,
It
that's
it
true.
it because they're 2 very distinct motions, right? Even though an MSP is an SMB, it's a very different type of buyer.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, so most companies in AI automation space are competing on features and speed right now. Was there a moment where you had to make a call that felt like it was the wrong move short term, but the only move that kept the company intact? The speeds and feeds, like basic stuff, rather than selling on value.
Yeah, we've had a couple. I would say the number one was we are as much a services company as we are a technology company. And sometimes when you commit to that services revenue, it's a little scary because the margins aren't the same. You don't know if you're going to be able to have the technology to deliver it. And there have been a couple times where we've, said yes, wondering, and this is the founder's side, like wondering, are we actually going to be able to get this over the line? Because you don't want anybody to look bad and you don't want to break trust. But
Right.
there have been a couple times where I think I've committed to more than, I'm comfortable with in
Hmm.
order to go through, and be able to deliver it. But we're starting to see the validation of that because I don't know if you saw OpenAI and Anthropic just committed billions to hiring forward operating engineers. They're saying we need more humans to drive the consumption of AI. And that was kind of our philosophy from the beginning that there's going to be humans driving that. Someday AGI comes, someday these other things. But right now, I've long believed that software without services is shelfware. And that's our belief. And I think there have been a couple times that from a failure perspective, I've leaned too hard into the technology and
Hmm.
I've expected people to get value out of it. And those have been the biggest failures to date. When we're there hand holding, it's less of a failure, right? Because at least we're going to provide some sort of value.
Yeah, that's interesting. I interviewed the other day Nick Mehta, who was the founding CEO of Gainsight,
Oh
kind
yeah.
of carved out he literally wrote the book on customer success,
Yes,
but
yes.
he had been a CEO and founder of a SaaS company and caught on early to the recurring revenue model complexities. And there wasn't, you had a sales organization, but you didn't really have an organization after the sale to keep it going on a perpetual basis. So it was interesting because you have to manage that. I mean,
Yeah.
once you make the sale to the MSP, they're not actually giving you revenue out of the gate. They're giving you the opportunity to sell through. Yeah. So, um, I imagine you have to bring on some of those philosophies that come from customer success about growing and maturing your customers, your channel customers, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's actually one of our most consumed agents is a lightweight gain sites, right? Because they
Mm,
need that too.
yeah.
But it's only because I've been through the Be Our Guest training, the Salesforce version of that. I was a customer of Gainsight.
Mm,
It's only because of that I knew that those things existed and understood the difference between leading indicators, lagging indicators, all the different touch points.
yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe you can listen to that episode
I'm
on.
absolutely going to.
Yeah, Nick is great. He's salt of the earth, shares everything. I know him personally very well. It just fantastic leader. So he's now on the board of Gainsight and is working through another VC. I think is Bessemer as
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, as a entrepreneur in residence. But so back to you. My final question. So as we've heard, your bet is that the action is actually in the SMB and the MSP tier for AI. Where does that market go in the next 3 years? And what does Synthrio have? What do you have to be true about to win that version of the world?
I think we have to be the leaders in enablement and governance. I I was I did a small stint as a CISO, Chief Information Security Officer. I was taught not to say acronyms without saying all the
Yeah,
words that go in them,
right.
and
That's good.
it's where I learned to be a CEO. So Arnie Bellini, the founder of Connectwise, was very clear on clarity,
Mm.
and so also none of the color red, no red anywhere. But that said, we as we go through this, I did a stint on the security side of the world. I was very drawn to blue teaming, right? Hardening things, making sure that they worked as perfectly as possible to mitigate business risk in order to achieve results without overextending your
Hmm.
risk.
Hmm.
I was never really the red teamer. I know that's where everybody always wants to, we love the Kevin Mitnicks of the world that,
Hmm.
did their time and, were the black hat hackers before they were the good guys. But for me, that just, there wasn't the draw in the breaking stuff.
I
And
see.
so, but that said, there was no template to draw from on the AI side. And so I am a big believer in the noticing of behaviors, and I noticed some weird behaviors. I've spent the last couple years mastering the way AI behaves off of its mathematics and its algorithmic
Hmm.
side,
Hmm.
and so I turned into a red teamer. I
I
have
see.
submitted I'm up to 9 responsible disclosures across the different model providers,
Hmm.
with 3 of those turning into, very public breaches.
Okay.
0 within about 6 weeks of me submitting the disclosure. 0 of them have been replied to. What in that time, I have seen multiple security, heads of safety, all these people resign from the different providers.
Wow.
Every single geopolitical, governance is afraid of reining in AI because they're very worried about
Yeah.
losing the edge as a
Right.
country.
Yeah.
My belief is in that the next 3 years, MSPs need to be the arbiters and the deliverers of governance, both from a productivity and a measurable ROI, experiential, as well as a security framework or a compliancy framework. I think they're well suited to do it, and I think Synthrio is positioned as a consumption platform and as a governance platform to be able to provide that, and
Hmm.
we're getting there.
Yeah. Interesting that you brought up the topic of governance and its adjunct like security and that sort of thing. With all the people, if LinkedIn is an indicator, so excited about the new agents that they can build, no one's putting any thought into the
No,
governance issue. And I know some people very high up in big companies, and they're not doing it yet. I Next week I actually finish an MIT course on agentic AI for digital transformation because I was self-taught in building agents early on, but
yeah.
I never got down to the NIST frameworks for building proper governance and the practical implications of deploying AI into an organization with trust. So I've
Well,
learned a lot, I gotta tell you.
so, it's become a passion point for me, actually so much so, and my founders were very supportive of this. I've built a framework, a little bit of hubris here, but I've tried not to, but a lot of people said, "Your last name's Sapien. That's a great name for somebody selling AI." Well, I created, something called the Sapien Framework. It's actually, safety and assessment, protocol for, intelligent entity networks. That's the acronym for it. But it is something designed to test and measure in the same way like NIST or MITRE or OWASP measure behavioral drift, sycophancy, as well as other things, and then drive to actually interrupt it. And
Hmm.
so, I'm hoping, and it's independent. We have it as part of sponsored by Synthreo. I'm hoping to get more sponsors. I'm hoping to get people to use it. Our concern, we originally were going to make it part of Synthreo. We use its scoring methodology. We use these other things, but we were worried that people wouldn't adopt it if we did because it would be tied to us. And so
Right.
we actually
Right.
spun it out as an individualized, independent, and open protocol. And
Right.
so I completely feel your pain on building agents and making sure they're doing the right thing.
Yeah. For my own use or any listener here, is this framework public whereby we could train our agents on it in
Absolutely.
building our environments?
Absolutely. It's
Okay.
sapienframework.org. I actually
Okay.
have to did an update. There's a CLI for testing. So
Okay.
I've handwritten 600, almost 600 scenarios. You have to do with that. Otherwise, the AIs notice it. It uses a mix between behavioral, deterministic judging
Hmm.
as well
Hmm.
as the LLM as a judge in a unique way. It's all public, so you can see. I'm not
Okay.
hiding anything. We want it to be public. You have to, in order to actually make something consumable and trustable, it must be Terapartable. And so we have all of that methodology sitting out there, and it's pretty cool to watch what it does. And there's some Easter eggs for us nerds. I'm a big Blade Runner fan.
Okay.
You can't see the neon over there, but the testing, the CLI is called the Voight Conf, and internally at Synthrio, we call our testing protocol Esper, which is
Hmm.
the name of the computer. So yeah, so it's but absolutely, please, would love to get scrutinized is the big thing right now. We're in the
Okay.
scrutiny phase.
I'll definitely be taking a look. So, well, to our audience out there, thanks for listening to We Built It Because We Had to. I'm Jonathan Buckley of the Artesian Network. If you enjoy hearing the real stories behind building technology companies, subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts and join us for the next conversation. I want to thank Callen Sapien for joining us today and sharing his stories. Callen, it's an absolute pleasure. I appreciate your story very much. The origin, what you're doing, how you're doing it. I hope it's an inspiration for others out there.
Thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate y'all listening.
Thank you.